morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. Brett, I'm sitting here in my dining room filled with Buckhead boxes
There you go.
from the renovation that we are beautifully creating, but we had a storm somewhere.
There you go. The moving is a reality of real estate, right? So fun to go.
It is.
I played that song for you, Stephen Schul. Yet, let's roll. I'm supposed to tell you guys that if you would like to ask a question or join the conversation anytime, raise your hand. Assuming there's a button that says raise hand, and we'll bring you into the conversation if you have a question or something along those lines. So the people behind the scenes, Kelly, are somehow going to make all this happen. There we go. All right, let's jump into this. So Fulton County. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right. There it is. All right, Fulton County. Let me scroll over here. All right, we have 1,092 new active activity in the last 7 days. A little bit more than last week, but it looks like it was down a little bit from the previous 2 weeks. We had 126 go active under contract and 286 go pending. So what is that? 402 properties changed status in the last 7 days. That's 40% of what came on the market. What do you make of that?
I actually like that stat for right now because we're in such a time where I think school started everywhere today, and everybody's last vacations were the last 2-3 weeks, or you're focused on that. I will say, I know this is completely anecdotal, but I've heard from other agents that it was an interestingly busier weekend compared to even last 2 weekends, which will be interesting to see what happens, 2-3 weeks from now, if they put things under contract. Maybe vacations are over. Maybe we had so much rain that you said, why don't we go look at houses instead of go play on the playground or go in the park? But I like where that is sitting for end of July, early August, the first week of school.
Yep. There's an article we're going to get to that talks about like this magic interest rate number where buyer demand takes off. And I'm going to put a pin in that for just a second. All right. We had 271 end of the month closings. We had the same number 2 weeks ago. So maybe we're starting to spread our closings out a little bit, which is probably a good thing. That's a lot of expired withdrawals. 278 at the end of this month. There were 275 the month before. I'm expecting this. We basically had non-existent expired listings. When we did stats last week, we're still seeing about 36% of the listings not selling. And if you just look at basically 300 expired and 1,100 came on the market, that's pretty much 30%, right? If you added withdrawals in there, it's probably closer to that 36%. It's still holding true. But that's Fulton County. Let's look at DeKalb. Come on. There we go. We've got 782, pretty equal to last week, active status changes over the last 7 days. We've got 75 that went under contract, so it's still holding kind of this pace or this cadence in DeKalb County. 167 are pending, and we've got 142 that expired with 150 that closed out. I expected a bigger end of the month to July than what we're seeing, but the real question I'm trying to get a grip on, Kelly, is did July 2025 outpace July 2024? And I don't know that we're going to know that for probably another week or two. The predictions we talked about at the State of the Industry last week, if you were there, is the wise ones are still saying 2025 is going to be 3% more sales than 2024 in the country. I don't know that I believe that. I think we're probably closer to flat.
I'm going to be of the same opinion. I think we're flat. I think we'll have a better third quarter 2025 than third quarter 2024. But that's, that's comparing like a very slow quarter to, like probably historically another slow quarter, but it was just so slow last year around that time. So therefore, I actually feel that some of these numbers will do a little bit more July adjustments because, the lag time of FMLS changing status over, we may see a little adjustment come next week. But because that honestly, August 1 was like Friday. So they may not have closed out all of July. But I actually feel that perhaps people have gotten realistic on price. The real stat is, how many price reductions and how does that go pending. That I can see now that if you've been sitting, you need to get realistic on your price and make some adjustments or get off the market and just wait for another time. So I think with that will go into third, fourth quarter. Hopefully that will encourage some more pending sales because prices becoming realistic.
I optimistically hope to agree with you.
Perfect.
All right. Cobb County, 618. It looks like Cobb County, I always say if it's over 600, it's probably good volume of inventory coming on in Cobb County. But it certainly looks like it's slowed down the last 4 weeks in a row. So our new listings coming on starting to slow down seasonality wise? Probably, but that doesn't mean the market's slowing down. It just means the seasonality is starting to take over.
Mm-hmm.
94 went under contract in the last 7 days. We had 182 go pending. Still, what's that, 300-ish expired, canceled. That's almost 50% of the inventory that came on the market expired. But that also tells me inventory is still growing.
Correct.
Just food for thought. All right, let's jump into some of these articles. So Andy Florence is the CEO of Homes.com, which the parent company of Homes.com is CoStar. So there's a couple things in this article that I think are interesting. One, it says we're not competing against Realtor or Zillow for customers. So the DNA of Homes.com as a company is not the same DNA that Realtor and Zillow have, which is their DNA is to generate leads, sell the leads to agents, and that's a revenue source for them. Homes.com is pretty much putting a flag in the ground, Kelly, and saying that's not who we are as a company. And what they're saying Homes.com is as a company is we're the only portal that is focused on marketing the real estate, giving the agent the tools that are really effective at helping them market the real estate on behalf of the owner. So different DNA, right? And Homes.com basically will talk to an agent and say, here's the historical volume of business that you do. So we're going to charge you this amount of money per month to give you premier marketing on your properties. And there's argument on whether or not there's a return on investment on that cost or not. I have heard from some agents and say they're not getting a return on that spend. I have heard from other agents that say it's a great listing tool at the listing presentation, and it follows that your listing, your lead philosophy, meaning if your listings are on Zillow or Realtor.com, those leads don't necessarily make it to you as the listing agent, where Homes.com follows the your listing, your lead. We're here to help you market your listings. And the other interesting thing about Homes.com, Kelly, is they also own Matterport. And there's data that says listings that have floor plans as a photo in the description of the one of the photos of the listing is a floor plan, gets higher view count, gets higher activity online. And then the 3D photos, which what Matterport is, drives it even higher. So it's the tools around marketing the listing, but it's very clear that their DNA is different than Realtor.com and Zillow. What do you think?
I would agree. You have to enter a Homes.com relationship with understanding it, if should you choose to do it. And it's really, it's about putting it in your listing presentation that you're a premier or you feature it. You have all these other listing things. If you're looking at it as a lead generation, I don't know if they're there yet in terms of that, but maybe it is. But I would say, I'm always find it interesting how they get, how they're determining I'm number one or whatever. But that being said, but eyeballs don't mean exactly the same, because it could be, my eyeballs 100 times. But that being said, I do think they have great commercials. I like their concept, but I also say I always look at third-party websites. If you're looking at it as a lead generation website, you really need to be very purposeful on how what you're doing with that, because it's it could be a lead gen, but I would say in this case, I see it probably definitely more of a listing enhancement versus anything else.
Agreed. And is that good or bad? Debatable, right?
It's depending upon how you want to service your client, and that's your own personal value proposition.
Yeah, and the question is, do you get a return on it?
Correct.
So here's the second part of this article that's a little wild. So earlier last week, CoStar, which is the parent company of Homes.com, is sued Zillow for copyright photograph infringement. And basically, Zillow is displaying over 46,000 copyrighted images on Zillow Rentals. Many of the images, CoStar claims, still have the CoStar watermark and have been displayed more than 250,000 times on Zillow, Redfin, and Realtor.com rental listings as a result of the portal's listing syndication agreement. So this is a giant copyright infringement lawsuit. And it's kind of crazy, one, but two, it's a reminder. Look, I'm not going to say names or even offices, but we've got copyright infringement. Can I call them ambulance chasing lawyers that come after these, that file lawsuits? So it's just a reminder, if you put photographs out there in a marketing context, you better have the rights to those photos, and you can't steal the photos from the previous listing. You'll get sued.
And I would, because this portal war is going on, I would not be surprised if more of these ambulance chasing lawyers come out. Especially all the people who like to take it off of FMLS, whatever, throw it onto their Facebook page or Instagram page. They, after writing this much copy, put they may reference, sometimes they don't, who the other listing agent is. The professional would courtesy call that agent and ask them if you could share their listing. That's what the professional would do. Or maybe you have an ongoing agreement with another agent. I think it's fine to share other people's listings as long as there's a permission, or if you use the FMLS link, because then that is fine. But if you're just downloading photos, uploading to social media, that is also a copyright infringement. And I see way too many people do that.
Well, inside our brokerage is one thing. Outside our brokerage is very different, right?
That's the issue. There's plenty of our other wonderful neighboring companies that love to do that. Let's just not do that without permission.
All right. Back to professionalism.
Thank you. I love this one too.
Says, listen, we don't need more disruptors. We need craftspeople. And what they're really saying is the consumers don't want influencers. They want advocates, people who guide big decisions with honesty, skill, and care. And in my opinion, what this article is really trying to say is, innovation comes sometimes at a cost, and our industry is going through a period of innovation. Social media is part of it, but it's also technology and lots of different things. Yet there is a foundation around our skills and our professionalism. And we as an industry need to learn, and it's very appropriate right now as the market's a little tighter, that we need to raise the bar around our professionalism. And what does professionalism mean? Most people think it means I'm talking about how you're dressing, which is probably part of it, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about who you are. You show up for industry update, you listen to the stats, you bring value to the table, you show up to training, you work on your skill sets, you work on your level of professionalism that you bring to your craft, which is called real estate, right? And I think it's just a good reminder that we probably need to level up around professionalism, and our sellers and our buyers need that from us, and they respect that from us. And just being a social media influencer doesn't translate to professionalism. Professionalism is the craft. What would you say?
10,000% agree. I think it's the craft of knowing how do you communicate well with the other co-op agent, with the buyer, with the seller. It's do you know how to structure the contract, the transaction? Do you know how to navigate when issues come up? Do you know how to present itself in the light, if you're listing, in the light that the seller wants it presented? I think it's all of the above. And if you could still get a lot of eyeballs on it because you have created a influencer type status, fantastic. At the end of the day, is our professionalism that takes it from going on the market to the closing table. And what do sellers care about, or even buyers for that matter? Can you get us to the closing table? 1000% agree that it's how we conduct business and how your peer-to-peer relationships go is what actually if it helps facilitates us going to the closing table. I think those people will be standing out. All the eyeballs at some point without sales, those folks will eventually go away as well.
All right. I'm going to give my best shot on this next talking point. So last week, a jobs report came out in the U.S. Economic world. And there's a lot of political opinions about this job report. And our job's not to give you political opinions. Our job is to tell you what we think this means for the real estate industry. And I'm going to give you an article that looks super politically motivated. However, he's calling it a scam, whatever. In this article, it's probably one of the best explanations I've read around what is the jobs report and how is it collected. And it talks about the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It talks about how they collect jobs data. I think you should educate yourself around the jobs report and read this article. Why is that important, Kelly? I've said it 100 times. To buy a house, you have to have three things. You have to have money to put down, a good credit score, and a job. So the fact that this report is the report that talks about the job climate in the U.S. has direct result to what goes on in our real estate industry. So if there's more jobs, that's a positive for our real estate industry. If there's less jobs, that's a negative for our real estate industry, just in terms of who can or couldn't buy a house. All that to say, there was a job report that came out last week. It didn't have favorable data. Whether it was accurate or not is irrelevant, because my opinion is it's going to stall out interest rates from coming down. And the Fed met last Wednesday. They did not change the rate. They're not going, the federal rate. They're not going to meet again until September. My opinion, they will drop the rate in September. There's an enormous amount of political pressure to do so. Yet, if you look here, this is a really important thing to know. So it's saying the threshold of 6.64% interest. Why is this important? Because in the last 3 years, when mortgage rates fell from 6.64% to 6%, housing demand has improved. Now the question is, can rates go lower? So Kelly, you're saying, hey, everybody I'm talking to is telling me that there was a busier than normal weekend. And if I go look at mortgage rates, and right now today's rate is what? 6.63. And this article is saying once they go below 6.64, that's where we see buyer demand go up. So that's a positive, one. Two, I'm under the impression this article here talks about the Fed could cut rates in September. You can read these articles, but this is the talking point. It's saying analysts expect rates to remain above 6.5% through the end of 2025. The hope or the optimism is that the mortgage rate was going to creep down to about 6.5 by the end of the year. I actually still think that's probably possible. But this article is saying as long as we're below 6.64, buyer demand will continue to get better. What do you think?
Yeah. And I didn't look at today's rate, so that was interesting. Thank you for pointing that out. That's probably why it felt a little busier. I heard it. So that being said, I do think because I think a year ago we were at 7.25, getting to 7.5 ish. So this is a 1% drop is quite a big psychological and obviously monetary difference. So I also think with this, the job person that collects the data, I do think this is an ongoing battle. I think I've heard too that people aren't responding like they used to, the way we probably get like all our different ways of technology, and we're skeptical of anybody calling us for some kind of poll. So I think that's why there's all these big revisions, because they're not able to collect data like they used to because of how we all talk. So with that said, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I actually think, there's so much pressure that I can see that him reducing it in September is a real possibility.
Yeah, but I think the economy has stalled a little bit. Consumer spending is down, so there is motivation to move the economy forward.
And honestly, I think anybody who's, as we constantly have said, if you've been sitting on the fence regarding interest rates, you're just getting behind the 8 ball again. I think little bit of movement, if it helps your affordability, great. But I think we just need to continue to educate our potential buyers that I actually feel like this fall is probably going to be one of the best times for them to be buying, regardless of the interest rate.
Couldn't agree more. All right, so this article on Inman says what your next listing appointment should look like. I'm going to break this down as simple as possible. They kind of give you a prescription of what a listing appointment should look like. But the part that I really want to point out is they're talking about asking open-ended questions that go 3 levels deep. And why I think this is so important right now is seller motivation is everything in this market. And for instance, here's the role play. Agents asking, why are you thinking about selling your home? Well, we're thinking about moving closer to a family. Most agents would stop there. They're saying go 3 levels deep. What makes that make sense? What's motivating the move now instead of later? Well, my parents are getting older and need more help, and we want our kids to grow up around them. Man, that's really important. How would being closer to them impact your daily life and your kids' upbringing? Man, it would bring us a peace of mind. We could help out more easily, and our kids would get to know their grandparents while they still can. Reiterate. So it sounds like you're hoping to be on the market within 3 weeks. Is that right? This level of motivation is so important when you're before you get to a conversation about pricing, before you get to a conversation about price reduction, before you get to a conversation around look, I need to have a tough conversation with you around get your crap out of here and take the pictures off, all that stuff, right? But motivation and that emotional motivation is part of the professionalism and the skill set that I'm talking about, right?
I would actually take those questions to like 5 layers deep.
Yeah.
Because at some point, you could have an open-ended thing where you're like, this time range works. And I'm okay as your listing agent because I can list it here in 2025, or I could list you in 2026, and I'm still going to be in business in 27. I'm your agent for life, so that's okay. I need to go. I love how they said it. They're like, why now?
Yeah.
Because there's always a range that's an acceptable time range for someone until something important or significant happens, like a new job or a changing of a school that you need to get them into, or family had emergency health situation, so being next to them is important. So I would actually ask that a little deeper, probably go 5 layers, and I probably would bring price in, because I would have had I've subscribed to a theory of listing appointments that I will be on the phone with you with a pre-listing consultation before I actually meet you for 45 minutes if I need to hear all these motivation questions and understand your expectations on pricing. So therefore, when we meet, it's a wonderful experience. And then we're just ready to like actually get into motion or determine the timeline when we want to get into motion. But with that said, I would probably even bring up price, because at some point, is there a number that would actually go, what, I'll wait this year and then do it next year.
Yep.
So.
All right. Last article. This guy's talking about a tax credit change will fuel housing construction in Atlanta. Here's just the thought on this. Anytime the economy is a little bit stalled, the tax credits tend to be the catalyst that moves things forward. I'm curious if we're going to see tax credits in the future. This guy is going out on a limb and saying a tax credit change is really going to change housing construction in Atlanta. I don't know if I agree 100% about housing construction, but I do agree if they were to reconnect tax credits with just the average buyer, I think it would absolutely fuel demand. The question is are they motivated to do that? I don't think we can count on it in the near future, but I wouldn't be shocked if we're on here in a couple of weeks or a few months and they're talking about tax credits. That's what they did in 2010 and 11. To pull the economy back up. So just something to have on your radar.
And if it's a temporary one, because I did sell during that time frame, just know it changes your seasonality. Once they add that in, your seasonality of cycle does change if it's a temporary thing. If it becomes a permanent thing, then it's just a part of our natural economy. So we'll see what happens.
Yep.
I think at one point they're even talking about the capital gains. If we're ever going to raise those limits, that would be a nice one, because I think it's been that way. I don't know, at least 20 plus years.
Yep.
At least 20 plus years. Yeah. So, but I would say this, I think Jamie Dimon is probably one of the most respected CEOs in all of the country. And so, what he says, I think it does hold a little bit of weight.
Mm-hmm. Matt Pitt, social media scripts, you got 1 minute.
All right. It's going to take 30 seconds. So we've got 3 reels for you. 2 of them are on the interest rate conversation we just had, and the third one is on the tax conversation we just had. We made one addition this week, by popular demand, and we'll do it every single week for you. We went ahead and added a email template for your database. So there's an email template. It's based around rate. You can copy and paste, make it pretty, make it yours. And
Show me.
I don't have control. I'm just hanging out.
Okay.
There we go. So yeah, email. So this is what Wall Street and the Fed are both telling us. And you just plug and play. Obviously, don't say hi first name. Put it into the software and make it work. And just trying to make it easy on you guys. So.
I love this. This is taking action around all this conversation we're having. Jeff Raw, you raised your hand. Jeff Raw?
Can't do anything with a raised hand unless you're putting something in the Q&A, as we said earlier.
We're learning.
We're learning.
Text me, Jeff. All right, guys. We start and end on time. Have a good one.